hi, I lied. I'm actually going to do one more lecture over chapter 1, and then I'll post the final lecture on the themes that I've chosen. So I'm here on about page 7, and one of the things that she starts to do in this part of the chapter is to talk about the difference between fixed meaning and unfixed meaning. Now, she never uses those terms, but she also doesn't use the term humanism, but she's definitely supporting a type of humanism. If you don't understand what that means, you can go to Wikipedia and read about it a little bit. But one of the more philosophical arguments that she's waging here is the argument between transcendentalism and humanism. To put that in super simple terms, she's waging the argument between what humans would do naturally if they were uninfluenced by institutions versus what humans do because they're influenced by institutions. And some of the main ones that she points to are like the legal institution, for example. But really what she's pointing to is a religious mind frame, a religious mindset that endorses the either or type of mentalities that we've been discussing. So one of the either or mentalities that religious institutions and institutions more generally support is the idea of transcendentalism, or the fixed center of meaning, which is God, right? So if you imagine this as, gotta get in the camera, this is meaning, this is what is true, this is what is real, this is what is absolute truth in this world, if you believe in such a thing. Now, most Christians, most religious people believe that there's such a thing as absolute truth in this world, and that thing is God. And so when their world is going out of control, when they're spinning out, when nothing else makes sense, they know that they can believe in this thing, this absolute central truth. Well, there's a whole populace of us out there that don't believe in the absolute truth of God, right? So when that happens, when you stop believing, or if you don't believe that there's an absolute fixed meaning, centered truth in the world, then that dissipates, and truth can be found in a number of different places, right? So she's kind of getting at that idea on page 7, specifically when she's talking about the practices of people. Are we looking at legal equality or divine right? She's talking about whether we're going to give the power to over ourselves to other people, or whether we're going to keep that power for ourselves. So the way that this is manifested most obviously is in the Christian community, for example, since we're in Eastern Kentucky, and that's right there for us to look at. In the Christian community, for example, the individual is supposed to give the power and the control of their life over to the fixed center, over to God, right? Well, in America, we're supposed to give the power and control of our life over to the legal system, or to education, and then also to God. So there are lots of these fixed centers to which we attach ourselves, and when you put them all together, feminism might call them the patriarchy, right? The people who sort of control what we think, how we act, how we're allowed to act, how we're allowed to think. And so by ascribing to the notion of the fixed center, it makes it really, really difficult for change and progress to take place, because if this is a fixed center, it's immovable, it's static, and it can't change. So that's problematic when you start to see actual human bodies working and growing and moving and doing different things, but the fixed center says that's not how it's supposed to be. That's where you get that opposition between religious groups and gay people, for example, transgendered, transsexual people, for example, is from this clash between the fixed and the unfixed center. If the center of meaning is fixed on God, then what God says is true. But if the center of meaning is fixed on the individual, then what the individual says is true. And that's a philosophical debate that has been going on since the dawn of time, and will probably continue to go on. But I wanted to point it out because she's drawing on that battle, and she will continue to draw upon that battle throughout the book. The way that she tries to resolve this kind of oversimplified binary opposition of the fixed center versus the unfixed center is through the concept of a continuum. She says that there is no such thing really as the either or, the fixed or the unfixed, but that there's a continuum. There are some things that change all the time according to history, according to context, that never stay the same. They're always in fluctuation. Then there are some things that sort of stay the same forever. Like she mentions that there have been intersexuals since recorded medical history began, but we've been hiding them, right? And there have been different ways that people have manifested homosexuality, although it's been conceived of very, very differently, but that body, that homosexual body, has existed forever. So some things don't change, some things do stay the same, but things around that go crazy. There are lots of things that are constantly in flux. So it's not an either-or situation here with fixed or unfixed meaning, it's a both-and situation. So she's trying to, the whole time throughout this chapter, she continues to come back to that idea, are we born or are we created? Is knowledge born in God or is it created by humans? The transcendental versus the human. So I wanted to bring that up before I let you go. She asks questions like, which body came first? Were we humans and then we were socialized Westerners, or were we socialized Westerners and then we were humans? What she means by that is, was it the Western philosophical man who thought of the idea of what is human, or were there humans before that? Were we acting, growing, primitive, feeling, embodied identities, doing whatever we wanted to do, acting upon our impulses and our instincts? Did that happen first, or is the whole idea of instincts and impulses a Western idea, or a human-created idea? So that it gets into lots of hairy philosophical places, but for the scope of this class, it will do for you just to understand that she's talking about the difference between a fixed and an unfixed center of meaning, and whether or not you ascribe to that sort of dictates whether or not you can agree with her the premises that she lays out in this book. All right, make sure I've got everything that I wanted to cover. Yeah, I love the idea of the Mobius strip. I'm going to talk about it a little bit more in the next video because it gets into one of the themes. So without further ado, I'll stop this lecture on the first chapter of the book. I'll publish another lecture on the second chapter of the book here in a little while, and I'll get into the theme discussion in the next video. So let's go ahead and go there.